welcome to a DJR production of Words With. Now, I'm joined on this occasion for the second time in this series with two-time Grammy Award-winning producer, pianist, keyboardist, arranger, charity supporter, songwriter, Mr. Simon Law, Britain's very own Simon Law. Simon, how are you doing today?
I'm good, man. Greetings from Toronto in Canada.
Right, because of course that's where you're based now. How long have you been in Canada for?
We moved here in 2004.
Okay, so a while.
So quite a while now, nearly 20 years, which is extraordinary to me. That time has flown by.
Right. And are you very much settled there now?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I come back to the UK frequently because my family is all there. I'm the only one who moved away. My kids grew up here. They were born in the UK actually, but my kids are all in their 20s now. They grew up here and went to school here and stuff. So yeah, very happy here. You know, it's a good country.
Excellent, excellent. I've heard lots of good things about there, and I need to visit as soon as I can. Right. So speaking of starts, where were you born, Simon?
Oh, I like this question. I was born in Luton Hospital.
Okay, so
salubrious place.
The Luton and Dunstable Hospital. Now, immediately you and I have something in common because I was raised there.
Ah, there you go.
So I was raised there from the age of 4 to 11. Then we moved back to London. I was born in London, moved there, and then we moved back. So yeah, so we have common ground straight away. A good sign, I hope. So, how long did you spend in Luton, or were you merely born there and then moved somewhere else?
I mean, my story, my early story of life is very much to do with my parents. Obviously, my father was an Anglican minister. So the early part of his ministry was in Leighton Buzzard.
Right.
And I think that was the nearest hospital. So that's where I was born. And actually, Dad couldn't be at the birth because he was being ordained that day.
Okay.
And so my middle name is Alban because he was being ordained in St. Albans Abbey.
Okay, right.
And not long after that, Mum and Dad moved to Trinidad in the West Indies. And my dad had a parish there.
Sorry, more common ground as well. My mother was born there.
Oh man, Randall, look at that, eh? Well, you know, don't you find that sort of the older you get, the more you meet people, there are so much common ground.
Yes,
often.
Absolutely. Yes. I mean, well, in general, I think we all have more in common than we have in general terms than we have different anyway. When you analyze it, which is you know, when you analyze it is a wonderful thing. But yeah, Mum was born there. So okay, so your dad had a ministry out there, you said.
Yeah, Chaguanas, the town of Chaguanas. Yeah.
Okay, right. Okay. Oh, interesting. Okay. So were the family based there then? I
yeah, we lived there from 62 till 67. And you know, my brother and sister, younger brother and sister, my sister Joanna Law, who's a singer you may well be familiar with.
Yes, I am very.
She was born there. She was born in Port of Spain. John was born in Port of Spain. My brother Christopher was born in England, and I was born in England. But we remember the place very well. You know, my brother Christopher. I'm the oldest, so we go down in two years sort of gaps.
Right. Yes.
And yeah, I mean, I remember the place very vividly, and I think it's had a profound effect on my life. You know,
I'm sure it has. Yeah. I'm sure for sure musically, but we'll get to that in time. Excellent. Yeah, so you moved back after 5 years. Where did you to the UK after 5 years? Where did you move back to?
We then lived in Shropshire, which was in a rural parish there. My dad had a parish called Stoddesdon. It was in near Ludlow. There's a town called Ludlow. Okay. And then I started going to, I'd fallen behind in my schooling, I think because the schooling was out of sync really in Trinidad and the UK. Okay. So my mum and dad were worried about what I was going to do. And so they got my mum, who was a professional musician, sort of tutored me to sing, and then I got a scholarship to Hereford Cathedral School, and I sang in the choir there, and then got free entry to the school there.
Right.
And so that really, in a sense, really started my musical journey, because if you sing in a cathedral choir, it's a very intense sort of formal kind of musical lifestyle. It's really you rehearse before school every day, you sing a service every day, you sing 3 on Sundays. You know, it's very high level music. So
yeah, and disciplined as well.
Yeah, a lot of discipline. No time for anything else but schoolwork and singing, really. So, you know.
So I should have added singer to your resume when I introduced you. Then I wasn't sure if you'd had been a singer at any point, but you have. So I should have added that to your to the list. Excellent. Yeah. Okay, so you've described quite an unusual life journey up to this point. Okay, you know, to the Caribbean for a significant amount of time, at the age that you were, and then back rural, idyllic. Okay, so your music journey began in the church. Okay, yeah. Right. So how did it then develop in the subsequent years, from, let's say, from then to your teenage years? What was the evolution?
Yeah. Well, I suppose, I mean, we say it started in the church, but you know, I would say almost prior to that as well was my mum being she was a professional singer. She sang with the BBC Singers, classical singer.
Right.
She went to the Royal Academy of Music. She was a very talented musician, singer, piano player as well.
Yeah.
And so I think I was around that a lot, you know. And then in Trinidad, I was around all the music there. Yeah. So I think that really, I was sponging all that up without knowing it, as you do when you're little, you know. Yeah, you just, and then I found myself in a cathedral choir singing all that music. So I sponged that up. And then when I left, you have to leave that life when your voice breaks. Yes, you can't sing any longer there, you know. So, and then I came back. By that time, my family had moved to Suffolk near Ipswich, and I came back there and went to the school where my dad was now the chaplain.
Right.
And I think then that was when I started to branch out into my own music, and I started writing music with an old school friend called Shane Rimmer. And we've just done a project together actually recently. And, you know, like, that's when I started to get interested in creating my own music. And I think then I started getting interested in funk. I was very attracted to jazz funk, and the music of a very important album for me was the George Duke Billy Cobham Band, Live in Europe. It's a great record, and it really sort of like, I honestly think that was the single record that just blew my mind open.
Right.
And said, yeah, this is the music I want to make.
This is that record that sparked something in the soul.
Yeah. And then it just blossomed from there, you know, and then you just, it's like opening a garden gate to a magical garden, and then off you go, you know?
Right. So, you know, where was your father supportive of your love of secular music?
Oh yeah, there was that was never a problem in our family at all. My mum, we just had they were very supportive of music, of all of us. And my mum was extraordinary because, you know, although she's very much from the classical background, we just had a celebration of life for her actually in Suffolk about a month ago. And a good friend of mine got up and spoke, and he remembered how there was a ticket going for Thin Lizzy playing in Ipswich.
Okay.
Somebody dropped out. So my mum came with us. You know, we're all teenagers. This is like 78 or something.
Wow.
And she came and she just loved it, man. You know, Thin Lizzy, just outrageous rock band. You know,
absolutely. Yeah.
Fronted by Phil Lynott, the most charismatic front man you could imagine. And it's like, you know, so there was never any problems in that area at all. No, they're very supportive of, and also supportive of creating our own music. We had bands in the family, you know, we had play with my brothers and sister. And
was there a piano in the home?
Oh yeah,
Okay,
always.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. They
always.
used
Yeah.
to that used to be quite a common theme in British homes.
Yeah.
Sing-alongs around the piano and all of that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Excellent.
I must mention actually, Randall, I just saw just yesterday or no, Saturday night, I saw Sampha play here in Toronto.
Right. Okay.
And
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
just around the corner, and he sang this most gorgeous song, which was basically the lyric was something like, "Nobody knows me better than the piano in my mother's home." And
Wow.
I thought, dude, that is a hell of a lyric. I totally identify with that. That is so
Literally.
true.
Yeah.
Like it was a beautiful song, really stunning. Yeah.
Yeah, Sampha's a great artist, actually. Somebody that I've discovered organically, and he is wonderful and has a great future, and is not quite what one would expect.
Right.
In all of yeah,
Pushing the boundaries, pushing the envelopes, doing unusual things.
absolutely.
The show was really very special. I hats off to the fella. He really is
Yeah,
something very special, you know.
very, very special. Lovely.
Mhm.
Okay, then. So, into your teenage years and beyond. So, did you study in university, and what did you study?
Yeah, I didn't do great at school, and I had to do an extra year to sort of notch up my A levels, and I didn't really. I mean, I suppose deep down I wanted to be a musician, but I had
Yes.
no idea how to get into it.
Right.
So
Okay.
I fell into teaching. I went to teacher training college,
Right.
and I did a BEd, Bachelor of Education, and I started teaching for a few years in Tooting
Yeah.
Common.
Right. So I
And
should
I
have
did
added
that.
educator to your CV
Yeah,
as well. Okay. Actually, the previous
primary school teacher.
yeah, oh, primary school. Oh, cool. Even
Yeah.
better. They're the nice teachers, if I'm not mistaken.
Uh,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
wasn't a very good teacher. I was, you know, my heart. I mean, I loved the kids. It was just
Yeah,
a lot of
yeah.
fun, but I wasn't. I didn't never felt I was serving them really well because my heart was just in
Yeah,
music, and
yeah,
I
no,
wasn't
yeah,
covering the math and the
right,
English and all that
right.
stuff very well. You know,
Okay, no problem.
way too much art and music being done in my classroom.
Well, you know what? I'm sure that the children benefited from that in ways you probably don't know. So that's all well and good. No problems there, I think. So you said you had no idea how to get into music. So how did you eventually get into music?
Well, that's interesting. I actually had a bit of a, I suppose, what would you call it? Those moments. I recounted this story a few times. I was
Epiphany, is that what they call it?
Epiphany. Yeah,
Yeah.
okay, good word. Yeah, epiphany. I just realized, okay, Simon, if you don't do something about this soon,
Mm,
time will slip away. And
right,
I actually was going, but by this time I'd whittled down teaching to be doing some supply work, and I
right.
was going off to do supply. And I got off the bus, got the bus back home, and never showed up that day. And
Really?
then
That was it,
and
yeah.
I took the plunge, and I went to work in, I think my first job was working in a clothes shop in Kings Road. Then I
Right,
worked in bars in Soho. My
right,
brother Christopher, who I mentioned earlier,
right.
you know, he was pivotal in all of this because he was studying to be an architect, and he was maybe he'd qualified by then, but he was
Right,
working and he was earning some reasonable money. And
right,
Christopher, and we had my sister and I had a band
right,
called, originally it was called the Pigeon People. Then we dropped the pigeon, we just made it the People.
right. Okay,
And we played every, I
right,
like to say we played all the toilets of London, man.
right.
We
Okay.
played anywhere we could play to
And
no,
you know
getting
that,
nowhere fast,
but
you
you
know.
know what? People, performers, if we have young performers listening to this now, that is crucial. Getting on stage and finding
Right.
out
True,
who
true.
you are
Yeah.
and what works and what doesn't, and how to work a crowd of 1 or 1,000 or
Yeah.
2,000
Much
is
the same, no
critical.
matter what the number.
Yes,
Yeah. Yeah.
absolutely. So once
So in
again, that
agreement, man.
yes, yeah, exactly. So all of that is critical, I think, in developing who you are as a musician going forward. So I can only imagine that kept you, or has kept you in good stead from then to now. So you're gigging in London. So Sorry, I interrupted.
Yeah. Well, we were gigging in London, and then, you know, but I was also very interested in the club scene, and I was already going to Soul nights, you know, before they made any music. They were putting on raves,
Yes,
and they were a
absolutely.
sound
Yeah, yeah,
system, right?
absolutely. Yeah,
So and Shaken Finger Pop, Norman J, and
right.
Femi, and all those guys, you know, my sister and I particularly, we would go out a lot to all that stuff.
Yeah,
And I was realizing that there was this whole kind of music being made that wasn't so much a band anymore. It was like people putting together a tune, cutting it, getting it on 12-inch,
right.
taking
Yeah,
it to DJs,
yeah,
giving the tune to DJs,
yeah,
spreading it as wide as you can, and hopefully something will stick. And,
yeah.
you know, our first record, thankfully, I took it. The first person I wanted to get it in the hands of was Jazzie B,
Wow.
because
Okay.
I loved their nights.
Yeah,
And we were already regulars at Africa Centre in Covent
absolutely.
Garden.
Yes, yes,
And
yes. The
you know, the
legendary
luck,
Africa Centre.
yeah, it was a legendary club, and played a huge role in my life, you know.
Can
And
imagine.
if I hadn't been hanging out there, none of this would have happened, I don't think. So,
Okay, okay, okay. Well, I would like to think one as talented as you would have found his way
well,
eventually.
perhaps, but it was so beautiful, and
Mm,
we used to. The vibe in that place was electric and
right.
very inspiring. So the music that we made, you know, was definitely inspired by that vibe, and it was the band we Joe and I called ourselves City Heat.
Right.
That started being played in clubs around London. We then got signed to Chrysalis Records.
Okay.
Danny D signed us to Chrysalis.
Right. Okay. Okay.
So Danny, big thanks to Danny always for that original kind of impetus. And funnily enough, the boss of Chrysalis at that time was Peter Robinson, who's now pretty much retired, but he's the owner of Dome Records, and that's
Okay.
where my
Right.
solo album came out
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
in
Yeah.
2017.
Right.
And a wonderful home for British soul music, Dome Records,
Absolutely.
many great artists on there. And
Absolutely.
so, you know, I met him then. And then obviously I started working with Jazzie and those guys, Nelly and Caron,
Mhm.
and things just exploded. And
From
then, yeah.
okay. So before we get to that magical conjunction of talents and what developed from that, how did you get into music production?
Oh, okay. That's a lovely question that you asked me there, Randall, because I have to give massive respect and gratitude to a person called Ross Anderson, who was a guy. I mean, it's lovely. We met, Joe and I met Ross Anderson on Clacton Pier
Okay.
doing a BBC Essex Soul Night Out
Wow. Okay.
radio show. And this would have been 86, maybe.
Okay. Right.
And Ross had a studio in Kingley Street.
Right.
And
Is that behind is it Regent Street?
yeah,
Street. Right.
it's
Okay.
that road that leads up towards that the Liberties Arch, you know.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Right. I know.
So Kingley Street basement studio was fundamental in my story, because, and then Ross was about 10 years older than me, and I mentioned him in the past tense because he's no longer with us. He died in 2017 of mesothelioma, which is the asbestos cancer, which is very quick. Once it's diagnosed, it's really difficult. It's pretty much over, you know.
Yeah.
So that was tragic, but he left such a legacy of his own music, all the music we made together, all the stuff he taught me. And he was so generous with his knowledge, and he was a deep lover of reggae music and
Right.
jazz.
Yes.
And he exposed me to so much stuff.
Right.
And I learned all about production from him in the early days. Absolutely. And we co-produced together, you know.
Right. So,
Yeah.
okay, so for those who may not know, what is music production? What do you do?
Wow. Well, that I think it changes in different circumstances. Sometimes you know, it can get blurred with the writing of music. I mean, if I'm involved in the writing of music with somebody, the production is starting immediately. because it's not so much like the old days where you'd write a song, although, some people do work in the old ways where you write a song and then you take it somewhere and do the whole thing.
Right.
With me, I work on the sounds and the whole sound very much right from the get-go, but that's technology and how we work these days. My partner, Jen, who's more in the folk and country, alt country kind of vibe, she's a proper singer-songwriter, sits down with a guitar, writes a whole song with a guitar, and then I produce her records. And that is like working with a songwriter who has got the whole song written, but what's the bass going to do? What's the keys going to do? How the background's going to work? Is this the right speed? Should that section come there? Actually, maybe you should hold that section off. A lot of arranging, production, how things are placed. So I think producing is a very, very wide, in music production, is a very wide area. And I think also very important as a producer to be very attuned to the artist or band you're working with,
right?
And you're trying to realize their best self. You're trying to bring to the fore the best of that person or that band, and so that really it's not just music. It's a lot about relationships and positivity and encouraging people to really express themselves.
Excellent, good stuff. So if you can, what three qualities do you think, if you can give me three, if you can manage that, does a producer need in order to bring the very best out of a song and or an artist? What qualities do you need to possess?
I think you need to be, I would say probably right at the top of the list is you need to be a really good listener. You need to be able to, I can, I say this sort of humbly, but I honestly, I feel like it doesn't matter the quality of the demo of the song or whatever. It's whether I can hear if a song is working or not. And I've been at it for a long time now, so I guess experience helps. Right. But like you can hear when a song has something magical, and it could be the crappiest little demo, but the person's voice, the vibe, the chords, the way it moves, the connection in the song, the emotional connection is there, and so being able to listen with a really open heart is very important. I think you need to know, I think you need to have, there are a lot of people, and I'm not, this is not meant to be a criticism. I think there are a lot of people who sort of imagine they are producers, but I think they are just sort of bringing what they do and slapping it onto whatever the person has got. They're not adaptive.
Right. Okay. Right.
That's another. I mean, that's another way in which music has changed. I mean, sometimes now, it's more important in some genres who the producer is and what the sounds are like than actually what is that song any good. And is the It's like it's almost, and I think technology is somewhat to blame there, really, because. But I think if you're going to make music that really lasts and starts the test of time, I think it's important to really sort of understand music and understand that, that I'm talking about, essential elements of music, how grooves work, how chords work, how the instruments work together, and I think that's probably goes for all genres, really. I think that's what was so, let me go back to Sampha. That's what was so refreshing to see him perform the other day, because the musicianship on stage was stunning. Yeah. And they were using a lot of technology. Right. Yeah. But it was still, the musicianship was out of the world, out of this world. And the sensitivity and the ebb and flow, the dynamics, were really something. And it just confirmed to me, those essential ingredients of music
Right.
dynamics, you know, chord sequences, interesting chords, interesting harmonies, rhythms, the understanding of how those things can all work together is really important. Not just, oh, I just do these kind of beats, you know. I don't know, man. I'm waffling a little bit, but
Not
there's
at all, not at all. It's all
thoughts.
no. It's all good, interesting stuff. So what do you place more importance on? Technical ability, you know, great you know, understanding of music theory, or feel, you know, or an instinct for music, which some people have. Some people have, you know, both. Some people have more of one or the other.
Yeah, no, it's a good question. I think in the end, feel is incredibly important, because I've met many wonderful players with technical ability that is pretty extraordinary, but they maybe don't really listen to much else that's going on at the same time. They're just there to sort of to shine themselves, you know. Are you really attuned to what's going on around you? It's you know, so I think feel and being able to play with other people, the feel and getting, and if you listen to many interviews with I mean, I consider jazz musicians to be the best musicians on the planet, and any of those interviews with any of those folks, those classic people, will always talk about feel and the emotion, and you know, because it's like, I think you're not going to get off the starting grid if you don't have some technical ability. So you have you have to practice your instrument. You have to do, but if you slavishly follow that and just really, it's all about technical ability, you may well find yourself lacking in the ability to really play well with other people, you know. So
isn't that what great jazz improv is all about? You get a group of very proficient people, but the greatest jazz improv is the feel in the space at that time, and everybody listening to each other and just letting whatever's inside come out.
And the sort of the way that, I mean, there's that beautiful clip with Herbie Hancock talking about one time he was playing with Miles Davis and he said, I played this chord and it was a really terrible clanger, you know, it was awful. And he just wanted to crawl under the piano and disappear. But he said what Miles Davis did in that moment was quite extraordinary. He made my mistake the way forward. And he played something off of that chord and you know, that tells a lot about this sort of this mystical thing of feel and sort of if you're there to sort of help everyone shine, and you have really good ability as well, you're free and open to really go to different places. And you know, this is not only jazz, this can happen in all kinds of music.
Absolutely.
And you know,
sorry.
No, I just think I love that story because it's sort of I mean, you know, you don't get much better keyboard players than Herbie Hancock, and you don't get much better
that's
period than Miles Davis.
Absolutely.
But you know, there you go. These guys sort of, and it taught Herbie as a young man such a lesson, you know, that there aren't really mistakes. You know, you gotta really, some things don't work, some things do, but you know, even in the moment, you can make something, you can shift, you can go all sorts of places, you know.
And that, you know, and if you happen upon what is wrong, then surely that's a gateway to what is right. So it's all relevant.
And boy, oh boy, I mean, how we learn from things that we we learn from our mistakes a whole lot better than we learn from the things.
Hopefully. Sometimes I wonder with certain people, but I certainly try to. But yes, no, I understand that. Wonderful. I was going to say something, but it slipped my mind. I think it was regarding, if we have any younger viewers, people who are on their way up, I think it's incredibly important to emphasize, you know, the importance of listening to what is great in order to then know what is great. That is something that on my journey I've always sought to do and had an instinct for, even when I probably didn't know who a particular artist was. If I got the sense that they were important, I would listen to them, and that has only been of benefit to me. So in terms of who you were listening to, who made up your record collection as you were coming up?
Well, I mean, I mentioned that very important record by George Duke and Billy Cobham, but I think sort of almost right at the top of the list would be Earth, Wind and Fire and Maurice White.
Right. Okay. All right.
Because somewhere along, not long after that time of discovering, you know, funk really, and jazz funk.
Yeah.
I guess I was I mean, Earth, Wind and Fire were already having hits by then.
Right. Yeah.
But then I started buying their music and the albums, and I just immersing myself, and something spoke to me so strongly in Maurice's music. And then that's another beautiful garden gate opening to a whole other sphere of artists, you know.
Yeah. I mean, the production on the Earth, Wind and Fire records to this day is ridiculous, isn't it?
It's ridiculous. He inspired everyone after him, you know. And in fact, his book is up here. I'd recommend anybody.
What's it called?
Called Maurice White, My Life with Earth, Wind and Fire. I keep it up there just to always remind myself. But I recommend anybody to
I'll get that.
To read this. It's a fabulous book because he was a really deep man. You know, he was very interested in spirituality. He was very interested right before in meditation, in vegetarianism, in all kinds of open-minded spirituality right from the get-go, you know. And way before it was yoga, all these things, way before it was hip hop, you know, or, you know. And Maurice talks about it all in here, and also how it impacted his band. And the thing was, Randall, I because of the success of Soul to Soul, somebody from his camp reached out to me, and he wanted to meet me and work with me. So I ended up spending 2 weeks with him in 1991. Can you imagine?
I know, I actually can't, but you know what?
I can't even believe I spent that time with this great man. Yeah.
But, you know, it's important for, I think, anybody listening to realize that, you see, this is what happens. Greatness breeds greatness, attracts greatness. So at the end of the day, if Maurice White is reaching out to you in this way, then of course it's got to be a huge validation to every instinct and every ounce of talent that you have as a musician. So what did you guys work together on?
Well, we wrote some music. My production partner at that time was a guy called Lee Hamblin, who's not in music anymore, but he's has a yoga retreat place in Greece. He left the music industry.
Okay.
Lee is probably well known to a lot of people. He did Jalisa Anderson's album.
Okay, now Galactica Rush. Now I played a track from that album on my radio show, right? And I think, what track did I play? World Keeps Turning. Anyway, in playing that record, I had had to tell the audience why I was playing it. And Galactica Rush is probably one of the best albums I own, and it's one of the greatest of that era. And it's a masterpiece. Man. It's an absolute masterpiece. And it's an album that when you happen upon people that know it, you can talk about it for hours. So once again, I'm not surprised that you know somebody like Lee Hamblin, because he too is he remains, whatever he's doing now, he remains to me one of the great producers and musicians that I've ever heard. And Galactica Rush is in my collection on CD, and it's going to stay there, man.
That's lovely. There.
It's a wonderful album.
I was just talking with Lee. He people can look him up. Actually, he's on Facebook and Instagram, Lee Hamblin, but he's yoga is his thing these days, but he's still a very creative man. He's writing poetry these days. And some of these poems he's putting up at the moment are just astonishing. I'd recommend anybody to check them out. They're really quite exquisite.
I will do.
But he funnily enough, we were talking about something just the other day, and he mentioned, can you imagine, Simon, we were in a studio with Maurice White? Can you imagine that?
Absolutely.
And we were sort of having just like slightly pinching ourselves. We pinching ourselves at the time, but we were young guys and just making our way, and I now realize the serious heavyweight situation I was in at that time.
But so you sound like
forever grateful for that time. Yeah.
You sound like you weren't intimidated though. You sounded like you were just excited by it.
Well, I think I was a bit intimidated because it wasn't the best work I've ever done. But and what happened was we wrote, I think it was about 5 songs or beginnings of songs that we wrote.
Right.
And then the album, and I can't remember what it was that came out. It was called Millennium or something.
Millennium, that's an Earth, Wind and Fire album.
Yeah. Or maybe Heritage, one of those two.
Okay, right.
Maurice was so sweet. He thanked us. We're in the thank yous, for working on the record.
Right.
And so our songs never made it. And they weren't fully fleshed out songs. They were tracks with just some melody ideas. But I've still got those on a DAT, and I will do something with them eventually because but they're almost sacred to me. They're
absolutely.
Well, they are sacred to me. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. So you mentioned Lee Hamblin left the industry to become a yogi. Now,
proper yogi, proper yogi, man.
Good stuff. So one might assume, knowing a little bit about the industry, that he fled the industry, okay, because the industry can be, as it was, could be quite an unforgiving place. Now, how has the industry changed from what you knew it to be to what it is now?
Well, oh boy. I mean, I've had ups and downs. I mean, it's a tricky business, and I don't, the one single thing which has changed everything is streaming, really.
Yes.
And we can't go back from that. No, that is there to stay. But I do think what us as creators receive from that, the revenue that we receive from that is pitiful, really.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's a real a real issue, and it's still to be resolved properly. Yes. It's still a work in progress, so I'm hopeful that things will be more equitable.
Yes.
And but I do like the way that there seems to be much more of a sort of emphasis on people playing live again now, and people really want to go and see music live, because I think people have realized that there's nothing like live music. It's just unbelievable.
It reminds me of the early 20th century, that let's call it the jazz age, because it wasn't the jazz age, where you had no choice. Singing live every night was what you had to do, so you had the greats that we can all name toured maybe 50 weeks of the year all over the world, and I can only imagine that can only make one better at what you do. And we mentioned earlier on in the interview, how valuable it is performing live in front of people and getting that sense in real time of the effect of what you're doing.
In the end, how your music communicates to the listener, there's no better way to experience that than performing it.
Absolutely. And indeed hearing it dropped in a club on a 12-inch, as you said. And
well, that's very special too.
Absolutely. So I can only imagine what that is like. But seeing like, for example, when you go to a gallery and see a painting, that's a very personal thing between yourself and whatever it is you're looking at. But being in a theatre or a concert hall and seeing the effect that your music is having on, maybe it could be thousands of people in real time, must be something quite special. So, you know, how does that make you feel?
Oh, it's glorious. It's a really, I'll never I never tire of that feeling. I never tire of hearing my music. If it's playing in a supermarket or something, you know, I just get a warm glow, and I'm forever grateful I've did that song or whatever. And you know, I go straight back to making it and the beautiful people I worked with. And
Right.
We there's a couple of things I'd mention about this. It's like one time, I don't play often with Soul to Soul live anymore. I did that for quite a while.
Yeah.
But we played at Love Box one time, the festival.
Right.
And when Caron was singing Yellow is the Color of Sun Rays, and it had been a really rainy afternoon, and she started singing Keep on Moving. And when she got to that line, the sun just beamed out, and it was like everybody went,
wow.
That's one of the most magical moments of music I've ever experienced. I'm just there sitting playing the piano. I'm going, whoa, what happened there? That was crazy.
So I'm trying to shape this interview, this narrative, but we keep on coming back to Soul to Soul. So let's just talk about Soul to Soul. Okay. I was sort of wanting to sort of finish on the topic of Soul to Soul, but Soul to Soul.
Well, we're Jazzie and I are brothers forever now, and Caron and I are sister and brother forever now.
Right.
And we're just forever joined, you know. So, and I feel so grateful to have made all that music with them, you know.
Okay. Well, speaking of the music you made with them, there is this on vinyl.
There you go.
Yeah. Now,
and you got the vinyl too, man. Good for you.
Nice. There you go. So
there's Beresford Romeo. There he is.
There he is, Mr. Jazzie B. Now, for those of you who don't know, this is an album called Club Classics Volume 1. That's what it was called in the UK. And it was the first album by Soul to Soul. Now, if by some chance you have no idea about this album and the quality of the album and what it means in the history of music, British music, soul music in general, then, you know, go out and buy yourself a copy, sit yourself down and have a listen.
Have a cup of tea.
There you go. You know, whatever your beverage of choice is, and listen. And you know what? I cannot guarantee what you will make of it, but I can guarantee one thing: you will feel something positive. That is, when you experience, and it is an experience, this album. So tell me how this project was born and how the association between yourself and Caron and Jazzie, how was that born?
Well, you know, it started because I was going to their club, their night at the Covent Garden, the Africa Centre in Covent Garden. And so, you know, once Jazzie started playing our 12-inch City Heat, he asked me to come to the studio and started working. By that time, they'd already they'd already put out Fair Play, the first song from the album. And that was the first single that came out. It didn't even have an album deal yet. It was a singles deal.
Right. Yeah.
With 10 records. And but that really blew up, that tune. You know, I was at I tell this story a lot, so forgive me if there are listeners hearing me.
I haven't heard it. So
you haven't heard it. Okay.
No, go ahead.
We were at the Africa Centre one Sunday night because it was a Sunday night jam, and the big announcement, you know, Jazzie in his thick North London accent. All right, everybody, got a tune to play for you now. It's our tune, you know. So he said something like that, and he played it, and I swear to you that the club went dead. Like everyone just stood around. It was heavy, and it was like, it was a slightly different kind of groove.
It is.
But
Yeah.
then after about a minute or half a minute, heads started to nod.
Yeah.
And then about a minute in, everyone's dancing. And by the end, people going nuts.
Absolutely.
Because, you know, Rose Windross just flying around with her sort of scat, jazzy, crazy singing. Dirty bass line, filthy bass line, you know, and it was magical. And I already knew these guys are going somewhere. Something's happening here. This is like bubbling up like crazy. And then, you know, then to be invited down the studio, and we were all young. We were just, they didn't know what they were doing. I didn't. We were just all making it up as we went along, man. You know, I brought the skills I had, which is I know how to play piano. I know a bit about music. I do some backgrounds on that album. You know, we were short of background on one thing. There's a song on there called Holding On, which I'm so pleased Jazzie actually sings now.
Oh my God, have a look at the older track list. I'm gonna, so for those of you who don't know, I'm removing the inner sleeve from the outer sleeve. Okay, this is what people used to do.
Lovely women.
Absolutely.
That's Gummy, and Chantal, I think, is the other singer, but the main dancer there with the long dreads is Wumi, who's she's incredible.
And she's in the Back to Life video, isn't she? Doing her thing. And a few other videos, I believe.
She's extraordinary,
And I believe she was also in Karen's Living in the Light video as well as one of the dancers in that, I believe. And it's just another great talent that was, you know, part of the mix. Now let me just have a look. What is the track that you mentioned?
Well, there's a track called Holding On there, which Jazzie sings. And, you know, Jazzie's got a voice. It's not a singer's voice.
Oh, yeah.
But he's got vibes and he's power and he's got a big voice.
Yes.
And I was always encouraging him to sing, you know, and when that song started to, we wrote that song together.
Right.
And he was singing it, and we didn't have a chorus, so I did a whole bunch of backgrounds on the chorus, and then I went to a club. In those days, you know, you'd get an acetate cut and you try out the mix before it comes out, just see how it went. I think it was a Dance Wicked night. There were these nights called Dance Wicked where it wasn't Soul to Soul. They may have been providing the sound system, but it was Jazzie was DJing, but lots of other people too. And he plays this acetate, and it's my background's all over it, booming out in the club. And I'm honestly, I'm like Homer Simpson, just going back into the hedge. Because it was just a scratch vocal, you know, but it sounded good apart from that bit. Happily, and the finished version has beautiful Zulu singing on it, like the South African singers
in the credits. Now let me just quickly find out the name of the person that provided that.
What was the name of that group?
Zulu vocals. Is it Shakisha?
Yes, Shakisha. Yeah.
Excellent. Okay, so how did you get the album deal?
Well, I just think it just blew up. Fair Play blew up, and then the next single, the second single didn't work well. It was called Feeling Free, and it's on the album. Feeling Free.
Yes.
Yeah, that didn't really click. But I think there was already such a buzz about the group from Virgin. They got an album deal, and then Keep on Moving, of course, came out, which I played a big role in, and that just went huge, and it was huge in America too, in New York. And then it really started to build up a huge head of steam, and then Back to Life came along and just smashed it, you know.
So did you have a hand in writing Keep on Moving, or was it production, or both?
Both, actually. Both. We the credit is actually incorrect there on the record, but I'm part of the co-writers there.
How was that song born? How did it come about?
It came about again like Ross Anderson's studio. It was originally we were working on it down there, and I think Jazzie had a rough idea that somebody had done and wanted it to be developed, and so I sort of pulled it apart and added a whole bunch of stuff. And then those are definitely lyrics Jazzie wrote, or he put together with maybe with some other folks. I don't know, but it's like I remember seeing some of the lyrics written down in his book, as I remember "However Do You Want Me" written in his lyrics book. You know, seeing some of these lyrics in Jazzie's got a certain way of script, a certain handwriting that I sort of that I love. I love handwriting. I love people's handwriting. I'm fascinated by it. And yeah, so you know, I remember all those things vividly, and we were just really it was an exciting time because you felt like you were on the cutting edge of things. You know, we were aware that we were doing stuff that was pretty original, and people were digging it.
They were,
So
absolutely.
like we sort of we felt really encouraged and given confidence to really go for it. You know, there was very little second guessing about stuff.
So, it sounds like the record company were very, very supportive, and people have varying experiences with record companies and their lack of support, or often potentially indifference to what they're doing. So it sounds like the guys at 10, did they know what they had? Was their support unequivocal?
Yeah, there's a guy called Mick Clark who played a huge role in this, and Mick Clark should always be given lots of credit. And he also went on to champion drum and bass and people like Groove Rider and a bunch of things, a bit later on in the 90s. Right. But Mick Clark, who's rest in peace, he's no longer with us, but he was very important in this, and he was the record company person at Virgin that signed Soul to Soul, and he was a big champion. Yeah,
brilliant. I mean, because that is often, well, used to be as the old business model of record companies were. That's crucial. If you have that belief from your record company, then you have a chance. It's not a guarantee of anything, but if you have that support from your record company, then yeah, you have a great shot at making it.
Yeah,
so wonderful, great. Bless his vision and support, because
very, very much
that was critical.
We always remember Mick as being with a lot of gratitude. Yeah, because he was a key part in the success for sure.
Right. Okay, so let's just go back a bit now. Now, I remember when Soul to Soul hit. Now, Fair Play was a track that I, before, the album blew up, for example, Fair Play was, that Soul to Soul track that everybody in London knew. I can't say much beyond London, but yeah. And then Keep On Moving came along. And I think, speaking as a member of the public and music lover, everybody just knew from that track, everybody just knew, as you said, this is something really special. And one of the elements,
so many times, man.
Yeah,
it's lovely.
Yeah, one of the critical elements of Soul to Soul and their success at that time was the voice of the legendary Caron Wheeler, one of the greatest singers I think I will ever hear in my lifetime.
I completely agree with you. Yeah, no, she was an extraordinary talent. And she'd already sang a lot of done a lot of work already as a background singer, and and early on in her life in Lovers Rock and in the group Brown Sugar.
Yeah, absolutely.
She was experienced, she knew her way around the studio. She knew what she was doing, 100%.
Yeah.
Needed no direction, no production. You don't need to produce Caron Wheeler's vocals.
Right. Okay. This was a question I was going to ask you, and you just answered it. Because as somebody who makes music myself, I wanted to know that. What, as a producer, do you do for Caron? Because I remember Narada Michael Walden said, I'm going to paraphrase, he said that when you're working with the divas, and he's worked with, of course, Whitney Houston, Maurice Franklin and Gladys Knight, he basically said what you do is you just turn on the landing lights and you stand the something back. Do you know what I mean? Because
you maybe wave those things that they do at the airport a little bit. The
but then
chorus is coming. Okay. Yeah.
then you
But
just
otherwise,
stand back. Yeah,
yeah.
just get out of the way, basically. So what is it like working with Caron in that sense as a producer?
Oh, we the first thing I want to say about Caron, because she I will say that it's sad. Caron is not very well these days, so she's unable to sing anymore. It's very sad. So I don't. I mean,
sorry, Simon. Sorry to cut you off. I noticed that I last saw Soul to Soul at on Blackheath in 2019, and I noticed Caron was there, but Charlotte sang all of her songs. I was wondering what had happened, and Caron didn't look particularly happy because she came out on stage, but didn't look quite herself. So I had no idea. So she is ill. So you're not okay. Okay.
Yeah, she's not well these days. So it's we send her all our love.
Absolutely. I didn't know that.
She's such an extraordinary, talented.
Yes.
And I was going to say, one of the funniest people I've ever met in my life, too. She has a sense of humor that will knock you. We just used to make each other laugh so much. And she because my dad was a minister, she always used to call me Vicar.
Right. Okay. Right.
All right, Vicar.
Right.
She's hilarious. And she was also incredible at accents. So she could do accents for anywhere in the UK. She could do amazing. Of course, she could nail a Jamaican accent. She could nail a Nigerian accent. She just, Caron is so funny. And but she, she just could sing the socks off of anybody. And and her background arrangements as well. Very, very creative, super. And sometimes you talk about just sitting back and let the person work.
Yeah.
Sometimes you're going, I have no idea where this is going. Like, I'm not going to try and say that. You just have to sit back and watch her put it together. And I know that I've actually adopted some of that way of working over the years too, like exploring harmonies with vocals. Really be quite free, because I remember Caron would come up with wild stuff that was, I wouldn't say it was an accident, but it's sort of, she was trying to do something and it went somewhere else. And she went, oh my God, that was good. Okay, let me double that or something. And it was very, it was so organic and growing in front of your eyes, blossoming. And just stunning talent. And often with very talented people, it just flows out of them, apparently with no effort.
A stream of creative consciousness.
Yeah, apparently with very little effort.
There's well, you know what, Jam and Lewis, who are another production duo who I hugely admire, and they in terms of music production, they are in my top three, if not of my list of producers, and you're in there as well. You're very
bless you, man. Bless you.
And they have a story about Caron, which doesn't surprise me at all.
Now, do they? I not heard this story.
It's the song I Adore You, and that's on her solo album. Okay.
Yes, lovely song. Yeah,
great song, and it's got a sample of Sybil, another great singer, within it, from her cover of "Don't Make Me Over." Wonderful, just highly creative, beautiful track. Right, great groove. And apparently, they called Caron and said, "Hey, Caron, we have a song we want you to sing on. So, okay, come on over." I think she may have been in America, based there, or she may have been here. But anyway, she went to the studio. They played her the song. Apparently, she wrote the lyrics. Apparently, she worked out the lead vocal, all of the backing vocals, got all that together, went into the booth, sang it, laid the lead vocal, laid down the backing vocals with all of, her lyrics, and left. And Jam and Lewis, this is Jam and Lewis we're talking about, right?
I know.
They said they were blown away at what she did.
I can believe it. I can believe it.
And after that, they said that she was their favorite singer ever. off the back of that.
Well, that's a lovely thing. I don't know that story. That's lovely to hear. I rate Caron right at the top as well.
Absolutely, yeah.
No, and I think also what great singers or great musicians, artists of any kind, they sort of they influence everyone who comes after them.
Yes.
And that's what Caron did. It's undisputable. If you hear, from Mary J. Blige onwards, Caron had a very powerful effect on.
Of course,
on,
you can see it in Erykah Badu. The Afrocentric dress, the depth of the lyrics, the depth of the creativity, and of course, Erykah featured Caron on her album Worldwide Underground. And I forget the track, but Caron is on there doing some improvised vocals, shall we say, on a track. It's very different, actually. Great, very, very experimental, and not what you'd expect. But so you're absolutely right. They're hugely influential, and you can, if you know who Caron Wheeler is, and I really hope that you do, and not only the music, but the way that she presented herself. You can see that's Erykah Badu.